Good evening, everyone. Welcome to PlaceMakers 8. PlaceMakers was designed and launched by CMLC in 2015 as a community education and engagement initiative to highlight CMLC's efforts and partners who have worked with us to realize these goals in achieving the successful transformation of East Village as one of Calgary's most livable and desirable communities. The series examines the aspirations of the East Village Master Plan, the successful repositioning/rebranding of the community, and delivery of one of the most ambitious master planned inner-city real estate programs in the city's recent history. We endeavor to showcase CMLC's approach, philosophies, and methodologies in solving some of the many riddles of the EV community redevelopment. Some of the past placemakers that we've had are including the role of public art in the emerging community, the role of public spaces in shaping the character of the community, the making of a great public library in the new Central Library project, building character and restoring heritage assets, and now we're heading into our 8th this evening, and tonight we're focusing specifically on the theme of attracting innovation to East Village. Over the past 10 years or so, CMLC has worked tirelessly on infrastructure, realizing the attributes of the East Village Master Plan. Our mandate has always been collaboration, resulting in nearly $3 billion of planned investment from our private sector, as well as our private sector as developers have seen the value of the emerging community that is the Rivers District. Now we're halfway through that plan, and with the bulk of our infrastructure programs complete, we're not so emergent anymore, but we're rather firmly footed in reality. Our focus is still on collaborations, but with an innovative twist. We have sought out partners that are working in innovative fields, bringing diversification and growth to Calgary. Tonight we'll hear from 3 of these innovative partners at different scales and levels, all with a different method of attracting and growing talent, investment, and innovation to East Village and Calgary as a whole. From the newly established City Building Design Lab, which we are in tonight, that inspires the generation of planners, architects, and city builders, to the innovative design and thinking being incubated in platform, and to new models of investing in our communities through nonprofit models like social venture partners. This is the next layer of story being told in East Village. Tonight we are joined by 3 speakers representing those organizations, who I will introduce. And I would also like to introduce my CMLC colleagues, Kate Thompson, our Vice President of Development, who is with us tonight, and you will hear from her later as well. Following the panel, we will have question and answers. So without further ado, on this beautiful night, if we're not going to open up the roof, let's get started. So John Brown is Professor and Dean of the School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape at the University of Calgary. He is a registered architect and a founding principal of the architecture firm Housebrand, a Calgary-based residential design practice that has designed and built over 250 homes over the past 20 years. John is an award-winning architect and recognized authority on housing, aging and community design, and entrepreneurial design thinking. Welcome, John.
Thanks very much. Hi, everybody. So welcome to our new home. Let me start with a question. How many of you know that there is a School of Architecture, Planning and Landscape Architecture in this city? Oh, all right. And how many of you just learned that tonight? Because that was not a question about how many are paying attention. We're 48 years old, and for 47 3/4 of those years, we've been called the Faculty of Environmental Design, which is was a great name in 1971. It was at the birth of the environmental movement, and it was all about innovation and transformation in 1971, that we needed to break out of the silos of conventional practice, that we needed to stop thinking just about buildings and just about cities, but start thinking about the broader implications. And it's an honor to be the dean of the school at this particular point in its time, where I think we are now transforming once again into into a new kind of innovation space around city building. And I know Joe, one of our original graduates, is here, and I see a lot of other alumni and friendly faces here. And the tradition of innovation continues, even though we've changed our name, just to be a little bit more legible so that people know exactly what we're doing. So I'm here to talk about this space and what this means. Every great city needs to have a great school of architecture, I believe, and I believe that it also needs to be located downtown. And it's like having a medical school that's not close to a hospital. And although our campus up in the Northwest is beautiful and bucolic and peaceful and safe, really not the best place to learn how to be somebody that builds cities. This is the place, this corner right here. And it was just a truly wonderful invitation the day that Kate called to ask if we'd like to come down here. And it took me about 30 seconds to say yes. It took slightly longer to get the university to agree and to work through all of the machinations around that. But we were here in February, opened our doors. And on April 26th, that sign appeared, which is a really wonderful thing. So this is the space we're in. We're pretty much, you're sitting right where it says event space right now, and this is one of the hearts of our lab. We're committed to offering 100 events a year as part of our funding arrangement, and we're thrilled about that. So far, I think we've had 25 in the first 8 weeks of where we've been, which is pretty good, ranging from small discussions with book clubs from Avenue Magazine of 20 people to events like this to, I think we had 500 people at our opening gallery show, and we're going to be hosting international conferences and all the rest. This is a place to convene conversations about city building, to convene conversations about innovation on a regular basis with our students, with our researchers, with our community, both public, civil, and also industry-based. On the gallery that you walked through currently has a show up from Detox, but it will be, it's open to the public 7 days a week and is there to showcase the innovations that are happening in the city and also to bring innovations from around the world to our doorstep so that we can all both celebrate what we're already doing and learn how to do all that much more. The design studio is the heart from our point of view where we have 75 students working throughout the term. They're either senior architecture students or senior landscape and planning students who'll be undertaking projects that are, again, transformative and innovative. And you can see some of the work from the graduating class are around us, particularly the Embassy for Architecture. That studio looked at the renovation of this building into a school of architecture. Hint, hint, for the whole of us and how we might turn it into, again, a kind of space for innovation, net zero, urban agriculture, all of the stuff that we might be able to do. If anybody wants to talk about naming the school with a $50 million gift so that we can actually do that, I'm here. After the show, we have a digital workshop which you can look in there. We've got 2 robots that we're just able to purchase. That we just purchased. One of whom is courtesy of the Alberta Masonry Association, where we're looking at digital masonry and how we can use a robot that can stand beside the mason to lay bricks in innovative ways and also ways that will save the backs and muscles of bricklayers and masons so that they can concentrate on the technically specific job that they're doing. And the good thing about robots is that they don't get tired, but they also, and they don't talk back or complain, take coffee breaks, but they also don't mind if the designer wants the wall to shift 1.5 degrees every brick, whereas in the traditional world, that can be a real problem. So there's lots of digital fabrication. That's one of the innovations that we're really interested in. I didn't know when I put this together where I was going to be speaking, and so I've got some pictures of where you actually are. If I was really smart, I'd actually have a live picture of you here, but it's pretty close. And that is the studio set up as a gallery. So We're down here. The original idea was, can you just come down and activate the corner so that it's not abandoned? And of course, we do that, and I think the presence of the students do that. But if that's all we did down here, then that really wouldn't be very satisfactory. And so we've created the City Building Design Lab as a manifestation of how we can bring our research and the sort of horsepower of our student energy, optimism, and talent to bear on city building, at this pivotal point in our city's history where we're rethinking all manner of things and really plotting a course for the next 100 years. What can we really do? And so, as you can see here, what we're proposing, or what we are becoming, what we are, is a research and design facility for the construction and development industry. It's difficult in the way in which the construction and building industry works to do a lot of research work that's off the clock, so to speak. Barriers to innovation are become very, very significant. Say heavy timber, gray water reuse, densification. Some of the things that are going on here, it's remarkable that they've even happened because they speak to the tenacity of the individuals involved. No parking in a high rise, that sort of thing. But those are difficult things to do when you've got risk and money at stake and all of that. And so our goal is that we bring those kinds of thorny, wicked problems into the lab and try and reduce the innovation barrier from here down to here by working collaboratively with the city and municipal authorities, with industry, and again, our researchers and external experts as necessary to really drive that innovation. And that innovation will drive economic diversification and job creation. Not in a one-to-one relationship, but over a broader arc. It certainly will do that. And the design, the digital fabrication that we're looking at has the potential to spawn a whole group of small business startups that in that space, as does smart cities and sensoring and technologies, which are two of the things that we're looking at that I'll speak to. I'm there. So overarching idea of all of this is the circular economy, the idea that we use the waste of today to create the city of tomorrow, and how we get away from a straight line, raw materials to production to use to the waste stream, and bend that around and back into a circular process. And that is both a physical piece, but it's also a social piece. And ride sharing, for example, is a circular economy idea because it uses higher use of cars, and office sharing, and that whole sharing economy is a piece of that, as well as just the normal idea of recycling. So in a circular city, if we look at it just from a very physical point of view, it establishes that notion across all of its functions in the civic ecosystem, and makes it regenerative and restorative by design. The City of Amsterdam is a leader in all of this. They've committed to become circular by 2050. We've established a research relationship with the City of Amsterdam, and we've invited representatives from Amsterdam and the Advanced Metropolitan Solutions Institute, which is their version of us in Amsterdam, to come come in September for a 2-day workshop. You'll all be invited to come, and we'll be able to see what they're doing. They'll be able to give us some interesting pointers on what to do, because they're about 3 or 4 years ahead of us in what they're doing. They're also interested in bringing a bunch of their startups that have come up out of their work into Calgary as a potential jumping off point to the rest of North America. So we've got a series of grand challenge themes that we're working on to try to frame this. The three that we have, the first is designing out waste, which is how do we use the waste of today to build the city of tomorrow. It's around this physical notion of infrastructural regeneration. The second is cities for all, which is about how do we create cities that are equitable and inclusive for all citizens, It's about affordable housing and urban indigenization. And then the third is metropolitan growth and change, which is really around policies and innovative ways of thinking about a thoughtful notion towards growth that's smart and sustainable, resilient, healthy, and all of those things. So very, very quickly, I'll just touch on two of these grand challenges. The first one, which we've been working on for the last year, is this notion of designing out waste and recycling value instead of volume. And one of the flagship projects at the University of Calgary is the redevelopment of the McKimmie building. If you're a graduate of Calgary, you know that the McKimmie building was the library tower, precast building from the 1960s, kind of the same age of this. And remarkably, and with great foresight the university decided not to demolish it, but to change it, to renovate it, and turn it into a net zero building. So Dialogue and Stuart Olson are the contractors and the prime consultant, and to take the stinky little building here on this side and turn it into that with a double facade that naturally cools the space. It's quite a remarkable thing. We looked at that, and we had a guest critic here from Copenhagen, and was looking at the concrete panels, and he asked the architect, well, what happens to those? And they were being very carefully removed and put on a truck, and he says, well, we take them out to the country and we grind them up into road crush. We are recycling them. It's like, well, okay, yes, you're recycling volume, but you're not really recycling value. And so we took that as a challenge. We used our robots, and the students and our researchers developed a robotic remanufacturing process that actually takes the panels and then through this robotic system turns them into something else, turns them into a new facade for a new building. And then we worked with the Britannia building downtown and developed an economic and engineering model with the Haskayne School of Business and School of Engineering to change this into this by reusing the embodied energy within the concrete panels that we already had. So that research is continuing. We have a new 3D printer that prints, it's 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet, big bed that prints concrete and most importantly, recycled plastic. And this year we're embarking on a research project that looks at how we can turn waste plastic into building facades. And we'll be hopefully at the end of the summer replacing one of these windows with one of those to do some testing. The second project, and I see Tawab is here in the audience, one of our landscape architecture professors, is a green alley project that we're doing with Calgary Downtown Association and the City of Calgary, where we're looking at how we can change one of these alleys, or hopefully all of these alleys, into vibrant places to live and also points of stormwater infiltration. So the vision that we have is how do we turn downtown alleys into vibrant people places and add street level activity, but also point source stormwater management into this infrastructure to bring vibrancy as well as stormwater resilience. So our goal in this 3-year project is to, at the end of that, is to have convinced everybody, landowners, the city, and the public, that what we need is a green alley pilot project, and that the city would then undertake that. So this is, if you don't know what a green alley looks like, this is what it looks like from a vibrancy point of view. It's basically about turning the alley from just a space for service into a space for living. And so it's about turning the buildings inside out so that they open onto that. It's about managing waste and service deliveries so that they don't happen at all times of the day, but can actually become something that is managed so that then you can live in these streets. And what's wonderful about them is that the scale is tight enough and it's dense enough, and you don't have street traffic in it, that they become people walking spaces. So we are actually working on a project, as I said, this 3-year project. There'll be a demonstration of that during Art in the City, which is in mid-September. We'll be transforming the lane behind the Le Germain Hotel into a living street for 3 days, which we're really excited about. And then I don't have the time to talk about it, but we're also working with some of the university researchers in sensing to develop a sensing map to be able to do pedestrian telemetry, basically being able to get evidence-based research on how people use space, which if you're an urban designer or an architect, you kind of guess that you think that the placement of this furniture or these trees or the width of this sidewalk is going to help make people come and use it. This is actually technology that can collect that kind of data in a real way that we'll be able to know about it. So not only is it about vibrancy, but it's also about getting the water because this is a hard surface area and it generates a lot of stormwater runoff. How can we get it back down into the ground at point source? And adding a new dimension to downtown Calgary's urban experience. So that's 2 of about 8 projects that we've got going underway right now. We're looking for collaborations. We're looking for people to take on this space and have events. We just want to become a part of the conversation. We want to be the neutral third space that brings municipal government and industry together on a neutral playing ground so that we can really start talking about innovations rather than problems. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, John. Next, we have Dr. Terry Rock. Dr. Terry Rock is the president and CEO of Platform Calgary, and he is working to bring, he is working to bring innovation to the core of the Calgary and Alberta economies. He is a passionate promoter of Calgary's potential, and he has extensive entrepreneurial and strategic leadership background. He is the past executive director of the Alberta Small Brewers Association and strategic advisor to Alberta Music Cities. He was also the founding CEO of Calgary Arts Development Authority. Terry brings diverse experience in consulting for high-potential technology ventures, government relations, marketing, and sector development, all critical to establish Calgary as a global innovation hub. Terry holds a PhD in management with a focus on strategic management, entrepreneurship, and innovation from Texas Tech University, and a Bachelor of Commerce in marketing with distinction from the University of Saskatchewan. Welcome, Terry.
Thanks, Amanda. Well, perfect segue from a 48-year-old organization to a 38-year-old organization that is on version 4 of its life. So talk about circular economy and reusing value. This organization started in 1981 as the Calgary Research and Development Authority, and at the time, very interesting how things evolve. At the time, the focus was on let's take technologies and push them out into the community, and that's how we're going to do this. And now we're much more focused on how do we solve big problems? How does innovation solve big problems? How can startups and innovation solve problems that we face in our community? And that's really what we're about at Platform Calgary, the newly rebranded organization that I'm happy to lead, and I have a number of my colleagues here today that I hope you get a chance to talk to. The other thing that's interesting about this is that we're a city-building organization, firmly in the camp of one of the groups of organizations in Calgary that is about taking our city to the next, to what is next. We've just adopted a new mission statement that is empowering people, building the next economy. And one of the things when we looked over our history of 38 years and said, what is this? Why did this organization come to be, and what's it about? We recognized that there was foresight, and someone named Alistair Ross that our building at the university is named after. Our city needs to be prepared to meet what's coming, and there's always going to be new ways of creating value and capturing value, and our economy is always going to be shifting. So how can we, as a whole city, be prepared to do that? And we think that's why they chose to create us. And we're happy to really get focused on doing that work now. So the kind of work that we do, kind of 3 pillars that we're looking at. The first one is, I'm happy to say, in the room today, if you guys put your hands up, we have 2 entrepreneurs that have moved to Calgary in the last few months, in fact, maybe weeks, to set up their businesses. Where there's one there. Yeah, there, back there. Yeah, so we run the Startup Visa program. And Emmett's here too. So we run Startup Visa. So we have identified 22 companies from around the world, entrepreneurs that are going to start their business in Calgary, their high potential technology business in Calgary, and they've moved here. So far, we've had 11 companies move here, and we've got houses being bought. We've got spin-off businesses starting already. And we've got to tell that story. And every day our team is talking to entrepreneurs who have ideas that are going to change the world, they're going to solve big industry problems. And unfortunately, not enough Calgarians know about that. So the first thing we have to do is tell that story. It is inspiring. We're inspired every day. The second thing is accelerating. So, how many of you have heard the phrase, it's time to diversify Calgary's economy? Right. So it takes a lot of work to do that. And so this notion of accelerators is over the past decade and a half or so, accelerators have become a thing that is sort of promulgated around North America and around the world. And really what accelerators do is they work with entrepreneurs and their ideas, and they really do two things. One is they help them get a mindset for growth, a mindset that is global, and on the other side, and to prepare them to lead those businesses, and on the other side, they help make connections that they couldn't otherwise get. Connections to customers, connections to investors, connections to talent. And so as an organization, that's a fundamental role that we have. We work with committed entrepreneurs to find them the connections so they can accelerate their business and go faster. And the third part, luckily, is placemaking. Because innovation is fundamentally social. It is not something that happens alone. And I want to bring in the concept here of Scenius. Scenius, I have to actually read this out, is the intelligence and intuition of a whole cultural scene. So it is the communal form of the word genius. So if you think about what John was talking about, what we're going to be doing, I'll tell you about what we're super excited about in a second. It's about actually building up that Scenius. And what does that take? It takes mutual appreciation. So we all kind of can look at what's happening and appreciate what's happening with our peers and be inspired to take the next step. It takes rapid exchange of tools and techniques. So can we iterate? Can we go fast? And when something is created, we show it off, and then we share it out, make sure that everybody knows what's happening. So we're mutually appreciating each other. We're exchanging our tools and techniques. There are network effects of success. So when someone succeeds, everyone's happy. We all claim that success, and we shout it from the rooftops. And finally, there is a tolerance for novelty. So if someone comes in and is a transgressor to the scene and they have new ideas and they're pushing, that's okay. They're protected. We want that, and it's okay. And there's people that actually say, no, that's okay. We welcome your challenges. We welcome your new ideas because that's going to make us all better. So where did this come from? Kevin Kelly, who's a technology writer, has sort of brought it out from the work of Brian Eno. And he talks about how this erupts in the Inklings. So J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, and their gang that really forced each other to be better writers. And we wouldn't have Lord of the Rings had that creative community not been around Tolkien. So my childhood would have been very different. Dungeons and Dragons wouldn't have been the same. The rock climbing scene that emerged in Yosemite in Camp 4 is an example of Scenius, where every time someone accomplished something, everybody got excited, told others, and then they challenged each other to do better. So that's what this placemaking is about. We need places like this place and like the place that we're working on so that we can build these scenes where we are challenging each other, we're sharing tools and techniques, and we're running into each other, exchanging ideas, and always challenging each other to do better. So I'm really excited to say that we have joined John in the run to downtown. We have the Alistair Ross Technology Center up on the University Research Park. But as we've come to really look at our mission, it became very clear that to be a community-facing organization, we had to be downtown. And we had to bring what we do into the mix downtown. And our team that's here had to meet more people out in the community and not be up on the hill all of the time. And frankly, we didn't want to keep spending an hour and a half a day running back and forth for meetings all the time. That's a big part of it. So we're happy to be over in the Hillier block, just over here with Platform Beta. It's a space that we're activating we have a community gathering space, we have co-working space where we can, the startups and entrepreneurs that are in our programs can meet and exchange ideas. And then our team is on the top floor getting 3 stories of exercise every day as we go up and down the stairs. And so why did we move downtown? Well, we have a challenge as an organization, as a community. We need to continue to build this social capital that is going to be part of getting us to where we need to go, because we've got a big challenge. Calgary right now, when I talk about diversifying the economy, really is not in the technology startup space, is really not on the global map. We do have some really important bright spots that I'll share in a second. But right now we think that there are about 2,000 high-growth tech startups, 200, high-growth tech startups that are located in our city. And that really doesn't make a dent globally. If we had 1,000 right now, we'd be a top 30 city in the world today. It's a lot of work to go from where we are right now to where we got to go. If we get there, if we, over the next 10 or so years, are able to build 1,000 high-potential tech startups in this city, that could mean 50,000 jobs, $10 billion of economic impact, and we would be a top 50 city, because I can tell you we're part of a global network, and every city in the world of our size is going after this. So a big part of what we're going to be doing and in East Village and in this part of the city is driving towards that goal. That is our team's #1 North Star that we're working on together with the whole community. We're only part of the puzzle to make that happen. The other thing that is really important, and I see Courtney here with Rainforest, and Gary's here. There's a bunch of people who've been a big part of the Rainforest movement. Rainforest talks about the messiness of how this all gets done. And there's a group of people, almost 2,000 people, that have signed a social contract to say, I'm part of this movement. And there's a score of 800 that, as a whole city, we're striving to get to. And we're currently at about 590 or something, at 599. And so we got to work on, there's multiple dimensions to that. But one of the things that we're saying in this organization is that you can count on us to have our eye on that prize, which is really about bringing the community together and building connectedness. I mentioned the bright spots. So one of the things that we think is really important for our city is that we put ourselves up against the best in the world. So we joined an organization called Startup Genome, which is nothing about genomics. It's really about what is the recipe in cities around the world for building high potential startups. And good news, because of the likes of Rainforest and Startup Calgary and ourselves and others in the scene, we're a top 5 ecosystem at our early stage of activation on connectedness. That Calgary spirit, the Calgary Stampede, and we're a volunteer city, is showing itself in the startup and technology ecosystem. In clean tech, good news, we're a top 15. We should be based on our economy, and we are. We've created some significant value, but lots of room to grow, and we have real strengths in life sciences and clean tech when you look at us across the global map. We think there's a lot more opportunity, and we're working closely with Startup Genome to figure out where Calgary can go. So here's my invitation. This whole process is a team sport. We're all in it together. Our city is in it together. And we're really saying that we have to have a movement. So what you see there is a picture of the some people call it the 9th Avenue Parkade. We call it the Platform Innovation Center. The first 2 floors of this beautiful building are an innovation center. And the building has been designed to be future-proof. So we can, as we drive less cars, or private car ownership is less of a thing, and people are using it less for parking, we can actually build up into it. So it's a flexible building, and that notion of flexibility is a fundamental part of what the building is all about. So that future-proof was really important to us, and I can say every time I see the Calgary Parking Authority, it's like we have our eyes on the 3rd floor. So just so you know, we're coming up. And so when I say we need to build social capital, you know, when the lights go on in this thing in 2021 and we're ready to go, we don't want to start then. We are starting now. We had 30 school kids in our office today talking about innovation. We're really trying to make it happen now so we can bring it into that in the future. What will it be? So when we first started looking at this building, it's kind of like, well, what are the kinds of spaces that are going to be there? And one of the great things about being in East Village is that we don't need to have to build a whole bunch of extra meeting space, because there's all kinds of convening spaces in this community. And as we work together, we'll be able to exchange. But we're going to have maker studios, learning studios, workspaces, social spaces, labs and labs, and places where corporations can hang their hat and try stuff. But that's kind of a space perspective. Another perspective on the building is sort of what starts to happen in it. And so there's networking, wayfinding, connecting, workshops, skills training, co-working, acceleration, startup acceleration, and it kind of starts to manifest itself, and you kind of look at the building as what the activities that are happening in it. Then, so we decided that we're here, we're doing this, we jumped in with both feet in December. So how is the mix of this, and how do we interface with the community really became the thing that kept us up. And so when we looked at the building, we sort of created this pyramid that said, fundamentally, this is a connecting point. It's the starting point. We aren't trying to bring the whole ecosystem under one roof. What we're trying to do is create a place that your ideas and the commitment that you have to entrepreneurship can be realized by a starting point that then connects you out into the whole community. So we envision having corporate Calgary have an outpost there so that their people that are looking at adopting new technology can actually, on a daily basis, interact with startups. We envision having SAIT and the city of Calgary. So SAIT has really great fabrication and prototyping expertise. We don't need to replicate that. They can have someone there, and then it's really about the community building. So the base of this pyramid is let's gather community. And as you go up, it gets into more and more finer detail, and it goes from gathering and networking to executing and delivering, and it goes from groups into more individual kind of work. So that is what we're trying to build. That is the vision that we have for this community. We could not be happier to be in this community. And the invitation to all of you is join us in building our city. Thank you.
Thanks, Terry. Next, we have Lindsay Reid. Lindsay Reid assumed the role of Executive Director with Social Venture Partners in January of 2016. She brought with her a wide range of expertise and leadership garnered from more than 10 years' experience working for both public and private organizations in Calgary. Prior to joining SVP Calgary, Lindsay worked at a public oilfield services organization as their manager of human resources. Lindsay spent 5 years working for a Calgary-based executive search firm where she specialized in recruiting senior leaders in finance, HR, and operational roles across a wide variety of industries. She holds a Bachelor of Administration and Commercial Studies from the University of Western Ontario, and a born and raised Calgarian. Lindsay's passionate about our city and being part of an organization that is dedicated to building capacity within our nonprofit sector and playing a role in developing our city's philanthropic leaders. Welcome, Lindsay.
Thank you. Okay, you guys probably are wondering, why is a nonprofit here tonight with Placemakers? But what I wanted to talk about with everyone in the room this evening is really about how SVP creates connection within our community and how ultimately, we are all striving for deeper human connection, and there's a great opportunity to build community with the work that Social Venture Partners does with the nonprofits that we invest in. So who is SVP Calgary? We are a registered charity. We were brought to Calgary by a super smart technology fellow and his wife, Brad and Tanya Zumwalt, in the year 2000, who wanted to go much deeper beyond writing a check. I'm sure we all often get hit up to give money, and they wanted to think about ways to give more deeply and understand more about what was happening in their local community. And so we've been around since the year 2000, and we've given over $2.3 million to 22 local organizations. So if you do the math, we give roughly about $100,000 to each organization that we invest in for a period of about 3 to 5 years. And what I like to talk about with SVP is that it's really an opportunity to leverage your giving. So if you think that you give a certain amount every year, but you're pooled together with a group of local Calgarians to give both money and some time and talent, that there's a real opportunity to leverage and amplify how you give back in your city. So we are a member-based organization. Lawyers sometimes freak out when I say that we're partners because they get all nervous about partnership agreements and what does that mean, but we're just member-based. And we pool our giving dollars, and we actually select the nonprofits that we invest in. So what I mean by that is we go through a fairly diligent process over a 6 or 8 month period, and we connect people from all different sectors who are our members, who come together and choose how to invest their social money. And then what we do with them is we help work with our nonprofit partners to build their operational capacity. So all of the unsexy stuff that lots of people think happens in an organization, like working with the board, and sometimes strategy people find really hard, or HR, or finance, or legal. Our team works with the nonprofits that we invest in to help build that up within their organization. The people and our partners who work with in the nonprofit sector and deliver programming to our clients are the experts in that space. And we often feel that we have as much to learn from them, if not more, than what we have to offer. So our mission is that we invest our collective skills and financial resources to propel nonprofits to their next level of impact. I fundamentally believe, although we partner with nonprofits and we're a charity, that they're still businesses and they still have to run well. And if they are not, then they won't be able to deliver the programming that's so key to the people in our city who need it. So I'm a little bit different in terms of why I ended up being co-located with Calgary Municipal Land Corp in their space. We really approached it from a values perspective. And at SVP, you'll see 3 very similar values. These aren't all of them, but they're the ones that most appropriately align. And at SVP, we believe in collaborative action. There's nothing that can be done alone. There's nothing that can be done just as a funder. I was listening to a great podcast with Melinda Gates the other week, and she said, philanthropy is just the catalyst. It's really important to just remember that that's just the piece of where people are giving. It's not the be-all and end-all. We all have to work together to make real change happen. The other piece is around supporting innovation. Again, the fundamental stuff, it's not super exciting, but what the programs are that people are designing to serve those in the nonprofit sector are amazing. And if we can be there to support and be part of the journey along the way, we feel really grateful. And then the third piece is accountability. I'm sure we've all worked at times with the volunteers who don't show up, or we don't show up for them if we're volunteering, and you kind of become that pain in the behind, if you will. And SVP Calgary really believes in accountability. We hold ourselves accountable as a group of members working with the nonprofits that we invest in, but we also hope that they are accountable to us and to the community that they are working in. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about how we invest in the community. Has anybody ever been to Fast Pitch before? Okay, oh good, that's more than I thought. That's so exciting. Okay, if not, November 7th, Thursday, November 7th, it's an annual pitch program that we run at Social Venture Partners. We've been doing it for 7 years, And we've had over 110 nonprofits go through the program and given out close to $200,000 in prize money and hundreds of thousands of dollars in volunteer time. But the purpose of the program is to be able to succinctly and powerfully tell your story as a nonprofit. It's so critical, right? You need to be able to catch people and grasp them. And they're coached by usually people coming from the corporate or the nonprofit sector over a 2-month time frame. And so it's, again, that opportunity to connect people who would never probably cross paths and learn about some of the great work that's happening in our city. And everybody needs to be able to tell their story and their why. So if we were to have 2 goals for Fast Pitch, it's pretty simple. We want to raise awareness about the great nonprofits that operate in Calgary. We usually, on the night of Fast Pitch, we do a live polling thing for all 450 folks, and we say, out of the 8 or 10 organizations that are presenting here tonight, how many have you heard of? And usually it's over 80% have heard of 3 or less of the organizations. So in the span of an hour, a group of Calgarians can come together and learn about 8 to 10 organizations that are doing great work in our city. And at the end of it, we would hope that all nonprofits who participate in the program have a jumping off point for moving into future conversations with various other stakeholders, whether it's clients, fundraising, government, you name it, that they have an opportunity to build on that. So I want to share a bit of a story about, as you can imagine, I'm out having coffee a lot with people and trying to get them to be either a member of Social Venture Partners or share the story of the work that we do or attract great nonprofits in our city to consider partnering with us. And so one day I was having coffee with a former colleague and she said, you should really learn about this Cornerstone youth organization. They're based in the northeast part of the city in Mayland Heights. They've just gone through a leadership change. They've got this awesome ED who's totally passionate. You should get him to come and pitch in Fast Pitch. And so I called him up and he was totally game. And I'll share a bit of a story. The pitch is 3 minutes long. And the first time he came to do his pitch, he was over 10 minutes. And I thought, oh dear, like I could be in trouble from my board and maybe some of the other folks. And turns out he was amazing. And part of what we do is thinking about how do you connect people to various causes or just even to have that human connection in the city. And so we ended lining Jeff up with two people. One, we had one of our members who was his coach. And Imperial has graciously been the presenting sponsor of Fast Pitch for 7 years. And so one of their coaches, who's a lawyer, came in and coached Jeff. And I want to just share with you his pitch. Let's hope this works.
730 days. That's the last 2 years of high school. Homeless, couch surfing, and sleeping out of my van. I remember memorizing precisely when the street lights would turn on at night, because I needed to use that light in order to do my homework. I attribute me being here today to a handful of caring adults and the youth center that they belong to. Without them, 730 days would have been a hell of a lot longer. My name is Jeff Gray. I'm the Executive Director for Cornerstone Youth Center, located in the northeast community of Mayland Heights. The program that helped me overcome homelessness is called the 40 Developmental Assets. And that's the same program that Cornerstone Youth Center now uses to teach our prevention skills to our youth. The 40 Assets was developed in California and has been tracking youth since the 1960s. Where they end up in life depended on how many assets they had. An example of assets are having constructive ways to resolve conflict without violence, having a strong sense of purpose and self-esteem, and having personal accountability for your actions. Our programs run before and after school to over 130 youth in grades 6 to 9. That's the same age range as Calgary's average age for recruiting gangs and prostitution. Our youth are voluntarily attending prevention programs with the themes of music, sports, creative arts, cooking, and academics. Let me repeat that. Teens are choosing to do homework. They're not only leading our programs, they're also tutoring each other. These youth want more than just a safe place to go after school. They're wanting somewhere that's going to help fill their tool belt for life outside of our center. Sounds simple, right? But it works. When we first introduced this program last year, we had over 4 times the national average of youth in the highest possible risk range. After just 1 year of implementation, we now have over 6 times the national average of youth in the lowest possible risk range. With a modest budget of $200,000 a year, of which is almost exclusively funded by hundreds of individuals who live in our community, our programs are not only unrestricted, but our community supports us. I'm living proof that this program works. With the cost to incarcerate a youth being $100,000 a year and $50,000 a year to house a homeless teen, we can't afford to fail. I'm asking you for $50,000 to go towards programming at our soon-to-open second center. The building is already paid for, so the funds will go towards running programs in a second neighborhood, effectively doubling our impact in Calgary. Because 730 days that I was a homeless teen is still Calgary's average length of homelessness, meaning my story is not unique. And the 377 currently homeless teens in Calgary tonight, not one of those kids.
You'll see he got cut off at the 3 minutes. Poor Jeff. He says he still regrets that. He's so great. So that can give you a little bit of a flavor of what the Fast Pitch program is and the opportunity for people who probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to connect and learn about some of the great work that's happening in our city to come together. So then you'll recall that I chatted a little bit about being a social sector investor, and that's exactly how Social Venture Partners considers itself. And so what we do once a year is we get a group of our members around a table, and they have the fun task of going through all these things for a span of 6 months, meeting with community leaders, learning about what's really happening in our city, and what are some of the serious pain points that we could potentially think about investing in. Then we take it out to market, we get requests for proposal, they come and meet us. We like to say that we go through a bit of a dating phase because we are quite involved with the nonprofits that we invest in, and some are ready for it and some aren't. So we have to respectfully agree that maybe you go on a first date but not a second. And then we talk about how would you want our members engaged with your organization in brainpower volunteering once you become an investee. So they talk to us a little bit about that. And then we meet with their board and their executive director, and we really try and figure out about the fit and the heart of the organization, because there's usually so much passion that is involved with folks that are running the nonprofits. We do also look at the financial health of the organization, which may seem strange, but we don't, SVP doesn't ever want to be the rescuer of a nonprofit that's close to going out of business. We want to be there for when you're looking to scale and have deeper impact in your community. And then our members actually truly follow their donation dollar. So rather than writing a check and maybe not knowing where it's going, they actually vote on who we pick as our next investment. And the most ultimate need that we want to serve is to partner with an organization that is offering a program or a service that's really in need in our city. So Cornerstone applied to become our next investment after they went through the Fast Pitch program. And we're in year 1 of our investment with them. And the thing about SVP is we don't give huge grants. We're not $1 billion endowment like the Calgary Foundation. We are a member organization where individual Calgarians give $5,000 or $2,500 a year, all tax deductible because we're a charity. And we pool that money at the end of the day, and we give them an unrestricted grant. And why that's so important in the nonprofit sector is you're often forced, people want to fund programs, they don't typically want to fund overhead. And what we say to our nonprofit investments is, spend it how you want. You're the leader of your organization, you know what you need, and let's talk about what the real operational pain points are of your organization. So, also a bit of a flip side, funders usually like to know what's working well, and we come in and say, what's keeping you up at night? And can we have a conversation about that? And so one of the operational pain points that Cornerstone was experiencing is that because they were so locally based, and they were about a 35-year organization, all of their board members happened to live exactly in their community. And they knew if they wanted to grow and serve more and expand into other communities that perhaps there's not existing programming, they would need to diversify, both from a skill set perspective and from just general experience. So one of the first things we did is we actually helped them recruit a new board. And so SVP threw it out there, and we managed the full search for them, which would be really difficult for a board of only 5 people. And one of our young partners came in and led the entire process. And so that's a lot of work when you're on a volunteer board. You're already giving a ton of time, and so to be able to say to people, we trust you, bring us the best ones and go through the process, and that's what we were able to do for them. And the cool thing is if you'll recall, that Imperial coach is actually gonna now join their board. And I love that that was the community connection that Social Ventures played a small part of. And he's a lawyer, and so he'll add tremendous skill set, right? So the cool thing is because we're partnering with them for 5 years, we are not leaving them once we've helped them recruit their board. We want to help them build the capacity and the strength inside their organization to be able to propel them to more levels of impact. So in closing, I want to just talk a little bit about leverage. You know, to date, we gave $15,000 cash, which to a $200,000 organization is pretty significant in the granting world. But our partners actually, in the first 6 to 8 months of our partnership, gave $45,000 worth of time. So 450 hours times $100 an hour is what we bill them out at. And so if you think about that, for every dollar that we gave, we were able to leverage for them $3 additional in paid consulting. And Jeff says, like, there's no way that I would be able to ever have that in my pot to be able to spend that kind of money. So I'll just leave you with one thought, and that is something that I firmly believe, and that nothing truly great can be accomplished alone. So if you are ever interested, here we are. I hope to see you all at Fast Pitch, because it's a super fun night, and thanks to CMLC for having me.
Thank you, Lindsay. So we're going to go to the panel discussion now, and I'd like to introduce our moderator. Our moderator is Kate Thompson, who is a colleague of mine. She's with CMLC. She's the Vice President of Development. Kate joined CMLC in January of 2013 to lead our construction and development division in delivering the master plan of East Village and the Rivers District. Currently, she is leading development of the Platform Innovation Center's construction management team while working closely with Platform, Calgary Parking Authority, project consultants, and stakeholders. She is also and was also instrumental in the strategy and planning of the U of C partnership, bringing SAPL to where we are today. And she's a registered member of the Alberta Architects Association, an active member of the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada. Kate manages all of the architectural controls for East Village, ensuring all the plans for new development align with CMLC's vision for the neighborhood. She is active in the community through her role as chair of the YWCA Calgary Board of Directors, and as a member of the Dean's Circle of Environmental Design at the University of Calgary, where she has been a sessional professor and an adjunct instructor since 2004. In both teaching and practicing architecture, she continues to highlight the importance of a well-built urban fabric and supports projects that strengthen Calgary's urban spaces. So welcome, Kate, to the panel.
You guys have to come sit at the Oprah couch. I think we can all say, I think Calgary's in good hands. Would you agree? I think these three are doing amazing things. I think it's interesting that you're all you do all your work with collaboration, but you yourselves are such leaders and pushing us all to something new. And one thing that I've had the pleasure of working with all of you, and I'm actually glad to hear more of what Lindsay has to say, because we bump into each other at our joint kitchen and we talk about things not as interesting and in depth as what she shared today. So it was great to get a little bit more insight into what she actually does. But I think it's interesting that you're all doing similar things in very different venues, But why are you doing them now? Why couldn't it have really happened, all this innovation and all of this collaboration? Why was that not a trend word 10 years ago? And what are you all feeling, or what are you all reacting to in your each individual groups that means that the time is now to do this? Is there a secret, or it's just that it's come together?
Well, I think, so I'll kick it off, I guess. Interesting, like 48 years old, 38 years old, right? So we have been doing it. But I think there were a couple of existential moments I'm a year on the job now, in the history of this organization. And not just this organization, I'm talking about even if you look around the world, Startup Genome is a benchmarking program, but it's also a network. And so we now have access to about 75 cities around the world with people that are doing this work. And I think two things have happened. One is it's very clear that the fourth industrial revolution is upon us, and everything is changing. And like it's scary in one point, but huge opportunities on the other side. So that's one thing that's happening very clearly. And a number of technologies are all kind of lining up, and when you start combining them, it's fascinating what can happen. That's number one. Number two, I mean, this has got to be Calgary's decade. This is the time in our city, and I think that the realization that, okay, you know what, like I use the line, should we diversify our economy, and it gets a laugh every time because, of course, we've been talking about that for probably 38 years. But we actually, one of the things that I think is important is that we're actually talking about creating new value and growing our economy through diversification and innovation. So that's my take, is that there's two big external factors. We need a new idea for the city, and new ideas are out there ready for us to jump on.
I completely agree with that. I would say that what I would add is I think there's a new urgency. We've been talking about diversification, but now I think it's really, it's got everybody's attention.
Yeah.
And you don't want to waste a good crisis. Like this is, I've been at the university for 33 years. It's different now. It's really different. There's a conversation that is just happening that hasn't happened before. And then I would say the other piece that's made a difference is CMLC and the East Village and being here. And it's been here long enough and had enough success to show that you can make a difference. It's possible with people with smart ideas and a commitment can actually transform something. We all know what this used to be. And now it's different, and it's world class. And that means something to everybody. I think it lifts all of our boats.
I didn't ask him to say that, but it's...
Well, it's kind of like, it's like a small wins kind of a thing. Like in other words, it's visible now, right? Like that somebody did something.
People need to see the change,
Yeah.
so not just hear it.
No, and it's also not by accident that you're here and that we're here, you're here, right? I mean, and we're all here.
It's a curated dinner party.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's important. Lindsay, I want to get...
I would just say two things. I think one, from the world of philanthropy, I think it's actually gotten a lot more sophisticated. I think people who are giving want to know more, and I think that they actually want to see collaboration taking place more. And quite frankly, most corporate organizations that we work with will tell you that collaboration needs to happen because they just actually don't have the dollars to give anymore. So those, I think, are two catalyst points that are really happening in the city. And the second thing is we're the most connected that we've ever been, but we're the most disconnected that we've ever been. And I think when we're looking at the work that Social Venture Partners does, it brings people together from every place that would never, ever be connected to work on something that has an impact for people who need it in our city. And so I think that's the real gratification point that people get for giving and being a part of it.
Yeah, and actually seeing where it goes and being a part of it.
Totally.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask a couple more questions, but I know a lot of you in the audience, so if you don't come up with questions, I'll probably just call you by name. Colin, come up with some questions. John, I'm going to ask you a question about, we did a video here before the launch and the year-end show, and you had a great quote, and it was about youthful optimism. And I think that you were speaking about the school, but I think you could also very much coin that as Calgary. And how are you reaching out with that youthful optimism that occupies the space into the city, which isn't always defined by youthful optimism, and you need to make those pairings between the students and industry. How do you do that? How do you bridge that gap and bring everyone together?
You know, in my experience, I don't think there's much of a gap. You know, if you think about Calgary, it is an entrepreneurial, idea-based economy, right? It's like, I think that there's something down there. Give me a bunch of money, let's see, right? And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. You know, there's this kind of openness to adventure. And to me, I think if you've got a good idea and a compelling story that and a potential benefit, I think you can make those connections. Since we've been here, we have done more collaboration and made more connections than in 48 years up on the Hill. And it's not that we've changed, it's just that we're here and people are just very, very, very open to it. So I think this is this city, it is this decade. It is our decade, and I am not worried at all. It's an exciting time for all of us to be here and to be part of it.
Fantastic. And so Terry, maybe to you, you talked about reaching out to other businesses and trying to get them to come, and we've got two representatives here.
3, I guess I saw another one. Yeah.
There you go. How do you balance the reaching out and the nurturing close to home? How do you get that?
Well, you know, one of the things that we know, having looked at cities around the world, there's a couple of things about that. One is there's no real playbook actually. Like we kind of know what it looks like at each stage of development. So the model that is Startup Genome starts at activation, goes to globalization, expansion, and consolidation or integration. And we're in the early activation stage. And so what that means is actually we're losing talent, we're losing money, and actual businesses are also leaving here. And the next phase of globalization is you become an attractor. And we actually know we are attracting. It's just a net issue that we have. So, okay, what does the model look like? You know, one of the great things about the rainforest movement is that it's about activating the local ecosystem and building local connectedness. But when you look at where we've got to be globally connected. So when we look at our programs, and if you're an entrepreneur here and you're starting a business that you think can scale, you need to be starting that with the globe in mind. You learn from your local economy, but have a view on the globe. And the more you're connected to global markets, and the more you have global peers, the more likely that's going to happen. And so we look at this challenge of building 1,000 high potential startups and say, well, they're not all going to come from here. We have to attract some. So we got started, and we've got a great team working on that, and we're building momentum because, you know, Mary Morin of CED talks about do the Coke Pepsi challenge on cities in Canada, and Calgary comes across, you know, on a blindfold test, it wins. And so we're seeing that start to happen when we have the global the conversations with people around the world about this is a place to make your startup happen. So it is going to be a mix, but we're really trying to have the ingredients of where we're going to start now, because we think that'll accelerate the process. Yeah.
Okay, for Lindsay. I like when you're talked about time and talent and treasure. I think it's a really good way of looking at philanthropy and not just about here's the money and go. How does SVP adapt that model structurally in terms of the time part and talent? How do you seem to have a lot of members that are volunteering, but how do you actually make that all work? Because people can be well-intentioned to give time, but to actually translate it to valuable time for all of your businesses that are asking for help.
Yeah, so we do have a motto where we say that you can be as involved or as little involved as you want. We do have very generous people who write us their $5,000 check and say, we'll see you when we get to pick the next investment. And I say, great, thank you. We will gladly take your money because we can pool it and give it to them, so thank you. And then we have others who say, I'm going through a big life change right now and I'm ready to jump right in. But there's a couple of things. One is we always, if we're doing a project with a nonprofit that requires a certain skill set, we always try to make sure that we have one person on there who has that skill set. So we were lucky enough to do a strategic planning session with one of our investments, and this individual happened to have led it for all of Imperial in Canada. So she had a big job and she knew what she was doing. But then we adults also learn best through experiential learning. And so we had partners come to us and say, I'm really interested in that, but I don't have the skill set to do it. And I'm like, well, you're on the team, so you're gonna make it work. And so that was great. And that was, again, people coming together through different sectors who would have never crossed paths and actually created a document and a process that was super valuable for the nonprofit. Because again, you don't wanna be that volunteer group that actually doesn't deliver, because that happens, right? Best of intention.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there any, I know Jack's standing at the back too, is there any questions for our fantastic group of Calgarians here at the front that you want answered? I'm gonna start picking people. There you go, Joe.
Yeah.
Why would the entrepreneur pick here? What are you doing? How do you get him here? Are we offering money? What's this?
We are not, no.
I think of the Amazon debacle
Yeah.
with that, which was, to me, was the biggest joke I've ever seen. That, yeah, and I'm sad to say to have seen Calgary participate in that.
Yeah.
But anyways, go ahead.
Well, you know, okay, so I'm gonna comment on that first, and then I'm gonna pivot over to why Calgary. When you look at what the Amazon promise was, it was 50,000 jobs, right? So I just showed you that you can get to 50,000 jobs a different way. You can get to 50,000 jobs through 1,000 high potential businesses. And you can do that through grassroots efforts and building community over a long period of time. And then that's just gonna expand well beyond that. So that's the first part of that, is that there's other reasons. One of our big limitations is talent. It's very clear that we have a talent pool that is not directed exactly where the economy is going, and there's a big transition that has to happen. And I think if you look at sort of macroeconomic models about how economies change, I think we've underestimated the switching costs of people's talent from one area to another. So that's a big issue that we have that is always going to be an inhibitor. But because of the new technologies that are out there, I think that there's so many more opportunities and ways to create value. So that's why we're going after the 1,000 startups, 15,000 jobs. Why Calgary? So Andrew is sitting over there, and so I'm going to ask him to nod as I say the things or shake his head, because his job is spending time on the phone with people. But I think number one is that the overall picture works. So the overall picture, meaning quality of life, so a place where you can afford a home, you can bring your family, it's safe. Like we are kind of the pinnacle of the Canadian ideal, and so everything that we kind of love about Calgary, when you place us up against other cities in Canada, and I think I would be safe to say that the entrepreneurs that we've attracted are coming here having first decided on Canada, and then Calgary is the choice in there. So I think economics work, and I think quality of life works, and then I think the vibe of Calgary is rubbing off on people. So last year we toured 12 startups from India, did a whirlwind tour through Calgary for about 3 days. We had a big event where we welcomed them and showcased them to about 250 people. And 2 of them chose to move to Canada, and 1 chose Calgary. The other one chose Toronto, probably for talent reasons. And I think the proximity to Silicon Valley is also part of that equation. And then that sort of vibe of, like, people are really, this city is on, like, we're trying to do stuff. There are some people that kind of, there's doom and gloom, but I just don't see that. I just see action. So I'll make a long story short. That's ours are digital and software firms for the most part. Yeah, digital. So we do a little. We have like so in the Platform Innovation Center, we aspire to have a prototyping lab for Internet of Things based companies. We aspire for it to be the first fully 5G enabled piece of infrastructure in Calgary, and it'll be in the 5 or 6 in Canada, so that companies that can come here and they can actually build a sensor, and then we're actually trying to build connections with Chinese manufacturers so that they can do rapid prototyping, stuff like that. So yeah, that's where we are mostly. So it's mostly software, digital, and into sensors and that kind of thing.
So,
Going,
so for you, John, how are you going to change stuff here? We're a car-oriented city. You're talking collaboration, everything happening downtown. We've got bike lanes, but I still see everybody leaving downtown right away. I heard today that the reverse lanes on, what is it, 5th? City's ditching that now. It's all back to one way. So how are you going to change that now that you're here? Congratulations for being here, by the way.
Right.
This is also from the man who built the no parking condo in East Village.
yes.
So
That's
just
right.
clarity.
I mean, I don't know that our mandate is how do we solve the car-oriented. That's one of the grand challenges that we're looking at. I mean, I think that if I look at what the broader challenge is, it's how do we bring the planning and building and construction industry into the 21st century, and how do we create that as a center of excellence that we can then export. And if you just look at the way in which throughout North America, if you compare the construction industry to the way it is in Europe, there's so much opportunity here. And you asked the question about, is it all digital? Yes, digital is obviously driving a huge amount, but it's also still about bricks and mortar and about the construction and management, operation, stewardship of the built environment. And I believe that Calgary and Calgary's construction industry, which I define in a broad way, can take a leadership position, particularly around this notion of circular economy and the spin-offs and the job diversification through that idea of expanding in that world.
I'm going to bounce off the first question that was asked around why Calgary from a startup standpoint for recruitment and folks that are here, but why should Calgarians care about this movement and follow along with what's happening? Obviously, we're the engaged ones in the room. We're passionate about it, but for those who maybe don't understand what's happening here, how do we shift that narrative so that Calgarians are supporting it and helping us come on the world stage?
Question.
Why don't you start?
Lindsay, do you want to
Yeah.
take that one?
Well, I look at it more, again, from a little bit of a different lens, is we all choose to live here. And the fact of the matter is there are people in our city who maybe need help. And much to John's number 2 point about creating a city that is equitable and accessible for people, whether it's through affordable housing or a vast other variety of things, food, just getting basic food on the table. Like over 4,400 kids go to school every day in Calgary with no lunch, which shocks me in our city because we're so generous. So I think it's much like what you said, it's figuring out how to connect people to make them realize like this is happening in your own backyard and this is happening in your own backyard. So Terry doesn't actually know, but I have an idea for a few of our nonprofits who are starting to actually collaborate together because data in the nonprofit sector it's just a forethought, and there's such an opportunity for folks in the nonprofit sector to come together and be able to share data to actually create social impact. So a few of us have been scheming behind the scenes that maybe some of the nonprofits that we partner with will actually eventually be in platform, working on stuff together to create social change. So now he knows.
That's my favorite kind of scheming. But that's actually why we kind of backed into the name platform because it's a the former train platform and all that, but it fits so well with our vision for what we're trying to be, and the answer to your question is that I know that what's happening with technology and with the way industries are transforming. Like the construction industry is going to be transformed, right? Like it will be. So how do you, this is where we say like, you know, if we were created to help our city prepare for the future and embrace the change that is coming, like that's about being prepared and educated and engaged in it. So the first thing is to know it matters to everyone. It sort of matters in the way that the Flames matter to everyone. If you're a hockey fan, you know, the Flames being in the playoffs is like really meaningful to you, but it still has like this ripple effect that you're like, oh yeah, like that's kind of cool, or maybe you're annoyed, but it matters, it hits you somehow. And so I always sort of think of a lot of these big changes are kind of background noise. Calgary's economic strategy has identified 7 key sectors that the majority of our workforce is in, most of our talent is there. Every one of those sectors is being transformed and has the opportunity to transform. And we look at it and say that Calgary should be a top city in the world for innovators that are trying to push the frontier in those 7 areas, because we have the people that can do it. If we get it lined up together and do this scenius building, placemaking work, we will be a city where this kind of stuff happens and the innovation spins out and that impact happens. I call it being a city for the world, where great things happen in this city and we have ripple effects out into the world. So it's going to matter to everyone, and the storytelling, the visibility of it. Oh, there's one other piece of that. One of the reasons why the Platform Innovation Center and the location is so important to us is when you walk out of the library, when you go to a Flames game, that's what you see. And then you ask the question, what's going on in there? Oh, we're actually building the next economy in there. And like, I know something that's going on in there.
Well, and the interesting, just to jump on that about the platform project, is that CMLC is lucky enough to be involved in that one. And when we started, it started as a parkade. And I know you said, well, it's not just the 9th Avenue parkade.
Yes.
But when we started, it was 510 stalls and X dollar value. And, oh, maybe you want to activate the main floor, like every parkade that you've kind of seen. And it was an evolution of trying to get different partners and collaborators at the table that got us to where we are, because everything you're saying is absolutely right, Terry, but it would have probably been just a cool parkade with, you know, maybe some bedazzled exterior, but this is so much more because it actually contributes to the area. And having actually sitting at the table with Calgary Parking Authority and Platform and all the iterations and all the different people, it's been fascinating, because I think you probably think parking as kind of backwards or, you know, kind of kind of rooted in the past. And if anything, they're really pushing for us to make sure that we keep Platform happy and make sure it all works and make sure that it actually is a collaborative building. And it's really interesting from my perspective as kind of a third party to the deal, and watching it all happen. It's better for, we're better and richer because of the collaboration.
Like parking tech is a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, it's a huge thing.
So,
They've won awards across the world for their Park Smart.
We have 3 or 4, and we do some work with TELUS, and we work on an open innovation program with TELUS. And in the past year, I think we've had 2 or 3 companies go through that program that use sort of sensor technologies and then advanced charging technologies and things like that that are very relevant to a parkade. So it's in our DNA.
John, you were...
Yeah, just to so we've been talking about innovation and diversification and all of that tonight, because that's kind of what this is about. But that's maybe not our core mission. Our core mission is to help Calgary and Calgarians build the future city that they want to have. And that's a collective design experience. And I think that our challenge, our goal is how do we make that manifest? How do we get more people to understand that cities don't just happen by accident, that every choice that we make, whether we're going to drive or take an Uber or walk or the things that we buy from food, all of those things shape the city that we live in. And I think it's a 20th century experience for most North Americans that cities just kind of happen and we don't know anything about it. The game changer for me within the East Village, and I'm not getting paid by CMLC to say these things, but it was the library. When the library opened, the city changed. right? It's a piece of built infrastructure. It's an amazing, world-class place, and people have flocked to it. And it's something to be proud of, and it's something that we made. And we can do more of that. And so when platforms open, it's just going to be a heck of a thing. And when this becomes the complete School of Architecture, it's going to be a heck of a thing. And,
That's the second hint he's dropped.
Yeah, that's right.
Duly noted.
So, see, if I say enough nice things, maybe it'll But, you know, if we can just have a conversation where we all are building the city from our own little neighborhoods to the big idea, then I think we're going to get somewhere.
Then we have a successful city. Bryn has someone at the back, I think.
Yeah, first I just want to thank you guys for pushing the big ideas. The city needs that right now, so keep up the good work. Specific question for John. You mentioned something that inspired us, myself, is the conversion of alleys to activate them. Is that specific to existing alleys, or are you speaking about new construction?
No, well, right now it's about downtown alleys and how we can look at that as a way of placemaking and increasing vitality with, you know, and getting away from the you know, what can we do on that 8-foot sidewalk width with cars going everywhere and move over there. And it's something that's been happening in a variety of cities, you know, from Oregon and Melbourne or Portland and Melbourne and Brisbane and the like. And I think that idea of converting the sort of forgotten spaces of cities, the High Line in New York, are great examples of how you can make a tangible difference in a small way. One of the things that we are aspiring to do is each year for our graduating class to do a project that transforms a small part of downtown. Cool. And you know, so that we can say, oh yeah, the class of 2020 did that, and the class of 2021 did that, and 22, and so we create this necklace of very small but meaningful interventions that wouldn't get done by the traditional consulting kind of world, and that collectively that starts to improve the quality. And it's those little things. It's the little things like the quality of a bench and a park and a meaningful alley that can give us, again, from this city building idea, give us all a sense that, yeah, hey, the world is a good place.
Yeah, that's great. Where would we find more information on the Leisure Main project?
It's going to be September 19th and 20th, that weekend. The Friday night, there's a party at the alley, and then the 20th and the 21st, I guess, that Saturday and Sunday, there's the Art and the City walking tour will be taking place there. So we'll be transforming that alley, and it's a public event, and there'll be media about it. If you check in on our website, and then in the fall, you'll find out more about it. But yeah, we're looking forward to having you come.
Will do. Thank you.
For those of you who know Meg Van Rosendahl, who was the founder of the Olympic Plaza Cultural District many moons ago, I don't think she's here today, but she's shedding a tear of joy right now about that project. It's amazing.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah. It's exactly what we need. Any other questions? Oh, Tom. Probably scream it out.
Thanks. I had a question that relates to financial technology. One of the big transformations in real estate coming is crowd-funded finance and how you can build private real estate through broader participation other than conventional channels. City building is a similar challenge. Our conventional way of building cities is through taxation and government money. Are there ways that you see on the horizon where citizens can participate in city building through voting with their own dollars in easy, fun, and convenient ways?
You want me to start with that one? I mean, so there's one of the organizations that does it called Fundrise. If you've seen that, I don't know if they have any projects in Canada, but Fundrise is one way of doing that, where you're basically sort of micro equity in big capital projects. That's really interesting. I mean, I got a smile from the team because we're actually working on a proposal right now for a real estate technology innovation lab that sort of, through some random things, maybe coming together. We're trying to do smaller versions of what you're doing in a big version, finding collaborative partners in key sectors in the community that want to come and build out innovation capacity in their corporation, transform their industry, what have you. So I think it's absolutely possible. The technology is there, absolutely. They just need inspiring projects to invest in. So where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Perfect. I think just to kind of wrap it up, I want each of you to answer a question about where do you think, and it's broad, but I'd like your answers to be just kind of 1 or 2 sentences. Where do you think innovation is going in Calgary, specifically in East Village? What are some aspirational pieces or directions you think this city is going in? And you all are talking at it from your own sectors, but you don't have to talk about it from just your own sector. What are some of the things you'd like to see in the next 5 years in this city or East Village or both?
I think East Village is becoming a hub. I've been co-located with you guys now for 2.5 years, and the transformation that I've seen in that time has been remarkable, particularly with the library. And I think it's becoming a hub for people that would have never come down before. Families, people who work in just 6 blocks from there who come down, the amount of my personal colleagues who work further down and came down to EV Junction last year for lunch on multiple occasions, that's starting to happen. So I love that it's becoming a hub and a place to bring families.
Yep, I agreed. That's great. John?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is.
It's a you know, I would say that it is, the physical piece is important, but it's also the ecosystem, the whole rainforest idea that you have to have that kind of critical mass of a variety of expertise and interest and passion, and that's when it starts to come. And I think that we're starting to see that, and of course, it's here, but it's also out and beyond. And there's super cool stuff happening in Inglewood, and super cool stuff happening in the Northeast and in the Northwest and outside in a variety of areas. And part of it is is all of us wrapping our arms around that so that people don't feel alone. The arts industry here is really vital, but it's below the surface, and the nonprofit world. And there's so many interesting things going on but when you get to that point where it starts to coalesce together, that's when I think it really takes a kind of quantum leap.
Agreed. Yeah, so it's less about the physical, but about the people, the human capital, or the talent.
That's exactly where I was going. There's one of my, what's his name now? Anyway, the book is Cities and Civilization that I'm thinking of. And he's Sir something something. So a scholar of how cities have changed in over time and how they've left an impact and what are the common factors in them. And Calgary hits like all of the really interesting parts of it. So rapid accumulation of wealth over a short period of time, increasing diversity, people who, the social order is disrupted. So it's not like old money, but there's like, sort of everyone kind of has a seat at the table. That mixing is there. And what we're missing when you sort of compare us to cities around the world that have left an impact is the communal space where people meet and ideas exchange. So for me, for Calgary to be a city that leaves a mark in history, and we have this window of time where we're highly educated, highly wealthy, we've got this entrepreneurial spirit, that what the promise of this neighborhood is the crucible for that. So that I think the library was a great example, and even the river pathways. Like if you try to bike on the river pathway on a Saturday afternoon, it's like go on the other side of the river because it's impossible. So we're like approaching a tipping point where maybe when our space opens, maybe when a couple of the really interesting projects here start to open and there's thousands of people convening here making stuff, and they're hanging out in restaurants, and you kind of know, we're jokingly talking about the cafe and platform will be called the back of the napkin. And that's where you come to do all that work. And so I feel like we're in the tipping point. We need a crucible, and then you start layering the rivers and the entertainment district and all of that. And now we kind of really have a critical mass of people who are there with sort of creation on the brain. And I'm really looking forward to being part of making that happen.
Fantastic. Well, maybe I can ask everyone to join me in thanking the leaders from Calgary. I want to reiterate, I really feel like we're in great hands. This is a small group, but I think it's a big representation of what the city can offer. So thank you so much for your time on this gorgeous patio weather day. So thank you.